drunk truth or dare spiraled out of control. My husband's response the next day took me by surprise. I walked into the living room, still battling the hangover that had pinned me down weekly. It was 6 a.m. I was supposed to return home before 10 p.m. the day before, an agreement with my husband, but circumstances didn't permit. I had goosebumps the moment I saw him sitting there, on the couch. The particular couch where we loved to cuddle in our free time. His face wore a stern expression that sent a shiver down my spine. I gave him a small smile, the kind he usually couldn't resist. Normally, that smile earned me a warm hug or a sweet kiss on the forehead, but not this time. He remained expressionless and motionless with the TV remote in his hands. He had his attention glued to the news playing on the TV. I am sure he noticed my presence. Why did he ignore me? That's so unlikely of him. Even when I break a rule worse than this, he never ignores me. "Sweet," I called softly. My husband said nothing. Instead, he stretched out a document to me. I opened it quickly, anxiety tightening around me like an undersized belt. I thought he was angry because I broke our curfew agreement, but what I saw in that envelope shattered me. Divorce papers. My heart broke into a million pieces. Divorce papers? How can it be? Am I dreaming or what? I pinched myself hardly to confirm, and truly it was real. No, this wasn't supposed to be our story. I had imagined a beautiful future, the two of us, retired and fulfilled, holding hands on the beach, admired by younger couples who took secret photos of our love, and journalists interviewing us on the secret to our lasting love story. But now, this paper was burning that dream to ash. My husband told me to sign the papers before the day runs out. He said it coldly and walked away toward our bedroom. I stood frozen, the paper trembling in my hands. What had I done to deserve this? I searched my mind frantically, replaying our last conversations, our recent weeks. Had we fought? Had I missed something? Nothing came. Desmond has never acted cold to me like the way he did that day since our 3 years of marriage. I still couldn't understand at that moment. Not until a few minutes later I remembered. Like a bucket of ice water pouring over my head, it hit me. The truth or dare game with my folks last night, I really wasn't interested in the game, but the voice of multiple people trying to convince me at once ran through my head. Could that be the reason? I really do not think so, I thought to myself at that moment. It was such a beautiful night. Everyone had lots of fun. I was seated in a circle, surrounded by people I hadn't seen in years, my high school mates. Most of us hadn't changed too much. Sure, we all looked a little older, maybe a bit more mature, but the energy was still the same, reminding me of the good old days. We were still those teenagers at heart, full of excitement and wild stories. We were playing truth or dare, just like we used to. It felt like time had folded back on itself. I took another shot of alcohol, not really because I wanted to, but because I had refused a dare I felt was too much. My head was already starting to feel light. I could feel the alcohol spreading through my veins, making everything look brighter, sound louder, and feel looser. I knew I had taken too much already, and I knew I was breaking rules set by my doctor, and worse, by Desmond, my husband. See, Desmond and I had been trying to conceive for a while now. It hadn't been easy. Each month had brought hope, followed by disappointment. We'd gone through appointments, tests, name it. One of the first things the doctor told me was to avoid alcohol completely. And Desmond? He made it even clearer. He wanted us to do everything the right way. If you want something badly enough, he always said, you must be willing to discipline yourself for it. I agreed with him. Honestly, I did. Desmond wasn't a harsh man. He was kind, loving, and thoughtful. He always did what was best for me, even when I didn't see it at first. He didn't want me out late. He didn't think wild parties were a place for a married woman. At first, I used to argue with him about it. I missed my old life, the parties, the loud music, the carefree nights. But with time, I began to see his point. I started to enjoy quiet nights at home, soft music, cuddles on the couch, and long talks about the future. So when the reunion party was announced, I knew it was going to be a tough conversation. I wanted to go so badly. It had been years since I'd seen most of my old friends. The idea of being around them again, even for one night, felt exciting. So I brought it up carefully, 3 weeks prior to the day. I sat him down, told him everything, explained why it mattered to me. He didn't say yes at first. He didn't say no either. It took a few more conversations and a promise that I would be home by 10 p.m. before he finally agreed. That was the deal. I would go to the party, enjoy myself a little, and be back before 10. But now, sitting there, lost in laughter, tipsy from too many drinks, I realized I had already broken that promise. I knew deep down that I was overstepping my boundaries as a married woman. Most of them here were unmarried, and few of the married ones here were women whose husband was out of town. The game got crazier, the dares got wilder. My old classmates remembered Sarah, who used to go all out. Back in the day, I never turned down a dare, not even the ridiculous ones. I once twerked in the public environment of the school just for a laugh. Another time, I danced on the principal's table during lunch hour, almost stripping until I was sent to detention. I was bold, reckless, and fearless. That was the Sarah everyone remembered. But now I was different. I was more careful. I had a home, a man I loved, a future I was trying to protect. And even though my old friends laughed at me for being too serious, I didn't mind. I knew who I was now. I had grown. I had something to lose. Still, each time I refused a dare, I had to take a shot. And with every shot, I felt myself drifting further away from my good sense of reasoning. The bottle at the center spun. I had lost count of how many times it had spun that moment. Each time it started moving, my stomach twisted. I found myself silently praying that it would not be me, but the bottle had a mind of its own. And somehow, it kept coming back to me, like it knew I was the one holding back, the one trying to escape the past. The bottle turned and turned for a while, and then it stopped. "Sarah!" they all shouted, laughing, clapping, some already reaching for another bottle to pour my next shot. At first I smiled, thinking someone else had been picked. Then it hit me. That was my name. The bottle was pointing at me, with David behind the bottle, that guy filled with mischief. Back in school days, I doubted he was different. Everyone was looking at me again, waiting and expecting, some with teasing grins. I felt like slapping it off their faces, others with wide eyes, already guessing what the dare would be at that time. My heart kept pounding. I suddenly felt warm, too warm. The laughter around me faded into a kind of buzzing noise. Why was I still there? Why hadn't I stood up and left an hour ago? I claimed to love my husband, but here I am, outrightly disobeying him. Why did I keep putting myself in this position? Those were the thoughts running through my head at that moment. The game was supposed to be fun. But at that time, it didn't feel like fun any longer. It felt like a test of how much I loved Desmond and cherished our marriage. One I wasn't sure I'd pass this time. "Sarah is such a bore. She probably has a bowl collecting the alcohol in her tummy," someone said from the background. Obviously they were drunk, but that single remark hit me like a heavy punch to the stomach. It wasn't the first time someone had said something like that, but this time it felt different. I've had enough of the demeaning speeches. I was very mad. You all would be wondering, why was I so mad? Was it the alcohol talking? Or was it the years of repressing my desires, my feelings, all for the sake of keeping up the image of being the perfect wife? But I love being Desmond's wife, or do I really know myself? Was it the fact that I was finally around people who knew me before Desmond, and before I had to play the role of the dutiful, constrained wife? Was I overthinking things? But I loved my husband. Whatever it was, it made me angry. "How about the truth, Sarah? You won't avoid that now," a classmate of mine asked, and everyone with their drunken faces lightened up with anticipation. The familiar spinning bottle in front of me seemed to be pointing straight at me again. At that moment, I thought there wasn't going to be a way out, so I braced myself like a reporter waiting for the next scandal to break, to unleash her writing skill. I wasn't going to lose face, not in front of them. After all, I had to keep my reputation intact. The bottle pointed at me for a reason, didn't it? "Prove yourself, Sarah," that little voice in my head pushed. "Truth, then," I replied confidently, hoping my voice didn't betray the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Truth or dare was an innocent enough game back in the day, but here, with the years gone by, it had turned into something far more dangerous. My classmates, all laughing and pushing their drinks aside, expected me to be the fearless, bold Sarah they once knew. But who was I kidding? I wasn't that Sarah anymore. Not after Desmond, not after marriage. The question that followed sent a shockwave through me. "So David asked me how I feel about being married. how I also feel, knowing that I could be a mom and my whole cheerleading life would be over? He added by asking how I feel about cheating on your husband the night before your wedding. The words hit me hard, sharp, and unexpected. How could David ask me such a question? A truth so loaded, so full of judgment. The kind of truth no one ever dared to ask me. The truth which I thought was buried under the carpet. I stared at David for a few seconds. He raised his hands in mock surrender, as if trying to defuse the situation. Certainly he knew what he did. He apologized, saying my ex, Jay, was his best friend, and he doesn't hide anything from him. I turned my eyes off his gaze. I couldn't look at him anymore. I couldn't look at it anymore because I was already irritated. The world felt like it was caving in on me, suffocating me under its pressure. Why would he bring up the past? Why did he have to dredge up something I'd buried so deeply? That day was supposed to be a celebration, a reunion, a time to reconnect and reminisce about the good times we'd had. Not that. But it wasn't as simple as that, was it? Nothing was simple anymore. What a world, I thought. I tried to keep my face neutral, but I felt like I was on the edge of losing control. I had to say something, anything. I couldn't sit there in silence, not when everyone's eyes were on me. So, I let out a short, sharp laugh, trying to mask the fear and confusion that burned inside me. Then I told them that I didn't cheat on my husband. It was just a kiss. Common, guys. It's Sarah. The night before my wedding was supposed to be eventful, right? At that point, my voice was rising slightly, almost pleading for them to understand. Everyone started laughing, and for a moment, I felt a ting of relief. Maybe I had dodged the bullet that was coming right for my vitals. I didn't want to be the boring married woman. I didn't want to be the one who couldn't have fun, who couldn't indulge in the reckless abandon that came with freedom. So I kept up the act. I played along with the laughter, fed off it, even though deep inside I could feel the cracks widening. I could feel a peep of betrayal. I continued what I was saying by trying to keep my voice light. I told them getting married isn't so bad. Desmond is a cool guy. He really is. It's just that sometimes I feel trapped. He loves to have his way most times, and it's all in the name of caring about me. I paused along the line, feeling the weight of the words, and asked myself if I really want that. It was a mixed feeling for me. Then I continued and told them that sometimes I feel like I should have never gotten married in the first place. They were surprised to hear that from me. They didn't expect to hear that. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. I saw the faces of my classmates, those faces I was trying to impress, some of them looking at me with surprise, others with judgment. But they didn't know. They didn't understand. This was the same Sarah who once lived for the thrill of the night, who partied till dawn, who could handle any dare, any challenge. But now I was married and my life was no longer my own. I told them Desmond really wants us to have kids, but you know what? It's just a dream. I pretend to have that dream too. But honestly, I'm not ready to go through the pain of contractions. I don't even know if I ever will be. I also told them that alcohol was against Desmond's will because of the whole getting pregnant plan, but honestly, I couldn't care less. I'll probably beg him when he finds out. He'll accept it, right? He loves me that much. I forced myself to laugh, and everyone also was laughing with me, and it felt like the moment of victory I had been craving. I had regained my crown, at least for a little moment. But then, I felt a strange feeling. I felt something wasn't right. I kept asking myself why I talked about kids, and why did I feel so empty? The laughter around me seemed distant, and I could feel my heart sinking. Was this really my desire? Did I really want to continue through this route? Did I really want to keep lying to myself, to everyone? I shook it off and focused on the party, on the game actually, but it wasn't the same anymore. The crown I had regained felt heavier, a weight I hadn't noticed before. The cheers from the crowd continued, but I wasn't feeling it. I didn't know what I wanted any longer, not at that moment, and that thought scared me more than anything else. Realization dawned on me as my head spun in excruciating pain, not just from the hangover effect, but from the flashback that just played in my head. My body felt heavy. My thoughts were disoriented, but nothing weighed more than the cold, heart-sinking question that kept echoing in my head. Could it be that Desmond heard everything I said? Did someone set me up? What exactly is the reason for the divorce? After remembering all that had happened the previous night, I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, holding the single piece of paper that had flipped my world upside down, the divorce letter. My eyes were trying to hold back the tears. My chest ached with a pressure so tight, it was as though the letter was squeezing my very lungs. I struggled to breath. My world was crumbling right in front of me. The room, once lively and sweet, felt different. It was colder, emptier, even though it was the same walls that had once echoed with our laughter. The same space where Desmond would sneak up behind me while I painted and kissed my cheek. Now it felt like a shell, lifeless, emptied, and abandoned. Desmond and I had been married for 3 years, 3 beautiful, almost perfect years. Apart from a few restrictions, which I fanned to be okay with, our marriage had been everything a woman could dream of. He adored me, pampered me, protected me. He was still to my chaos, the muse in my confusion, and the patience in my storms. There was never a day I doubted his love, never a moment I questioned his loyalty. He was the realest man you could ever know. We hardly argued. He was that kind of man, matured, deeply grounded, soft-spoken, yet firm. Desmond was a dream come true for me. So why did I say those things last night? Where are their hidden feelings? Why did I spit on the very love that had held me so tenderly for years? The questions dug deep into me like tiny needles. I clutched the letter tighter, as if hoping it would somehow disappear from my grasp. I wasn't ready to believe this was happening. Desmond told me not to work when we first got married. Of course, he could take care of me for the rest of my life, but I wanted to work. I needed to. I love art. It was something I've been passionate about since I was a kid. He respected that. No argument, no guilt trip, just support. He helped me set up my studio, encouraged my gigs, and connected me with large organizations. That's the kind of man he was. I studied fine art in university. Life drawing, human forms, the kind of art that told stories through every curve and shadow. I could tell stories and express emotions with only paintings. And Desmond, he was my most inspiring subject. There were mornings I'd sketch his silhouette while he read the paper, coffee in hand, sunlight splitting through the blinds in his favorite spot of our home. I had never told him, but those sketches were my favorite. I loved Desmond, and I still do. And yet, I betrayed all that last night. Yes, it's my fault. Or whose fault would it be? I still remember the day we met like it was yesterday. It was a cold Thursday morning. I was in the city's most popular cafe, negotiating an art display deal with the manager. That's when Desmond walked in. Calm, silent, commanding. People literally whispered in admiration when he passed. He didn't need to speak to be noticed. He just commanded it. At first I didn't look at him, but the growing hush and low-toned admiration around me heightened my curiosity. When I finally gave in and looked at him, our eyes met, and I swear time stopped in my little world. He had those eyes that didn't demand your attention, but once they had it, you couldn't look away. I couldn't. For the first time in a long while, I found myself captivated, unable to mask it, and surprisingly, he fixed his gaze on me. When I finally looked away, my contractor called my attention. Gosh, I hoped he hadn't noticed who I was staring at. When the meeting ended, I walked outside, hoping to shake it off, but there he was in the parking lot, leaning against a black SUV, a phone in his hand. He looked up and smiled. That smile. For the first time, I could describe what it meant to have butterflies. He walked toward me like something out of a dream and asked, "Hello, lovely. May I meet you?" Just like that, calm, polite, disarming. That was the beginning of our story, and it has been beautiful ever since. So what changed? What evil demon possessed me last night? Was it really just the alcohol? I sat down on the couch, burying my face in my palm. I cried my eyes out. I kept going back to the questions from the party. Those horrible, reckless questions. David's smug face, the way he set me up like it was a joke, like it wasn't real people's lives at stake. But what hurt the most wasn't that they asked me, it was that I answered. And even worse, I had enjoyed answering. I was soaked in the attention, the laughter, the hailing. I wanted to feel like the boss again. I wanted the spotlight, and for that 10-minute moment of glory, I put my relationship with Desmond on a thin thread. I tried to convince myself it was just a game, just a party, just drunk talk. But it wasn't, was it? It was a confession, and I didn't even realize it until the lie detector stayed silent. Or was it faulty? I didn't cheat on Desmond, but the kiss, the feeling of being trapped, pretending to want kids, those weren't lies. I had buried them beneath layers of normalcy. I have lived with mixed hidden feelings, but they were always there. And now they have spilled, crashed. I broke everything. I clenched the letter tighter, trembling. This couldn't be real. He couldn't have left me. Not Desmond. Not the man who'd wipe my tears at 2 a.m. Not the man who'd cancel board meetings just to attend to me when I had a little crisis. No. "Desmond!" I screamed, jumping up and running toward the door. At that moment, he was getting out of the house. Immediately, I tried to stop him from going. Not a single word did he say to me. That wasn't like him. He always talked things through. He always held my hand, even when I was the one at fault. I kept telling him to please wait and talk things through. But he walked out on me and got into his car. I reached for my phone and dialed his number. It rang once, and then twice, then straight to voicemail. I called again. It was the same thing. My stomach twisted. The spinning bottle from the previous night, the roaring laughter and hails from my classmates became a nightmare as they all replayed in my head. Then suddenly, I remembered something I hadn't noticed earlier. At the time I was telling my friends about the pregnancy stuff, I heard footsteps towards my direction. I turned but couldn't see who it was. I was too tipsy and tired. It was when I had made that final joke about adopting children, and everyone started laughing, that I had heard them. A presence that made me pause and turn, only to find nothing. But what if there was someone there? What if it was Desmond? Had he come to surprise me? Or pick me up since it was past the curfew we agreed on? Then probably scold me with love and respect in his eyes like he normally does, then give me a hug when I become moody. Instead, he heard his wife, his queen, drag his love through the mud. I dropped my phone and it landed on the floor. The thought of it made my chest tighten. He must have been devastated listening to those words. Seeing the woman he loved and cherished speak of him like he was a cage, immediately I sat on the floor, pulling my knees to my chest. Tears kept rolling down my cheeks. Desmond wasn't just a husband. He was the safest place I had ever known. My comfort zone, my second chance at happiness. And now I have bruised it all because I wanted to feel like a cheerleader again. All because I couldn't just say no to a stupid party or game. I told myself I had to fix the mess I had made. Even if it took 1,000 apologies, even if it meant digging deep into places I had buried, I had to make him understand that my heart still beat for him. That I was just stupid, not ungrateful. That I was lost in the moment, not done with us. He needed to know. He had to. But first, I needed to find him. I walked helter-skelter through the living room, trying to get myself together, wiping tears with the back of my hand, pacing like someone who had lost all sense of direction. My head spun with too many thoughts and emotions, shock, confusion, fear, regret, all fighting to take control. Then I heard the door crack open. It was Desmond. He walked in like a stranger, his face blank, eyes empty. He didn't even spare me a glance, not even a second. He brushed past me like I was air, a mere shadow in the home we once called ours. I called out to him and he stopped mid-track but didn't turn. Immediately he said something that broke me more. My husband told me I had just 24 hours to leave and told me he doesn't go back on his words. Then he walked away. I ran after him and I met him in the bedroom, throwing shirts into a suitcase, the one he usually carried while going on a short trip, trips he'd try to convince me to come along with him to, telling me how much he was going to miss me. I asked Desmond where he was heading to and pleaded with him not to go and let us talk things through, but Desmond said there was nothing to talk about. I asked him why he handed me divorce papers and told me there was nothing to talk about. I asked him if this was how much this marriage meant to him, and if he was pretending to love me all this while. Desmond let out a dry, humorless chuckle, one that stabbed deeper than 1,000 insults. He told me that I was such a drama queen and continued picking up another shirt and folding it carelessly into the suitcase. He didn't stop. He didn't look at me. He just kept packing. I stood there sobbing, helplessly watching him prepare to walk out of my life. When he was about to leave, I fell on my knees and asked him not to leave and forgive me for not keeping to the agreement. But Desmond told me it wasn't about the agreement and said he heard everything I said to my classmates the previous night. I was shocked and surprised. It was then everything made sense to me. The footsteps I had heard weren't hallucinations. It was Desmond. My husband took a few steps backwards and asked me not to come any closer to him. He told me that I threw the love he had for me into the mud. He told me I drank, knowing fully well what we agreed, what the doctor warned, and what we both said we wanted: kids, stability, a future. He chuckled, but it wasn't out of humor. It was bitter, almost mocking. Desmond also said that I hooked up with my ex a night before our wedding. He shook his head. I told my husband that I was drunk and that I didn't mean anything I said that night. I promised him that I didn't even remember, and it was just a silly game. Immediately, Desmond yelled and said he knew I was going to twist things up, just like I have always done. He told me that I don't remember things, most especially secret things I had done, and I'm hiding, and that always makes him sick. Desmond told me to always own up to my mess and not try to sugarcoat it, most especially when there's evidence. My husband told me he watched me bluff about everything that night, and he heard everything. He told me not to dare lie to him because he would lose his temper and could do crazy things. Immediately, he reached for his ring, twisted it off his finger, and with zero hesitation, tossed it into the small bin beside the bed. I was short of words at that moment. All that could be said was calling Desmond. I told him I loved him and I didn't want to lose him. I begged him to forgive me and pleaded with him not to leave. I was so weak because I was crying uncontrollably at that moment. I was also hurting from the hangover, from losing every shred of strength I had. But Desmond had already closed his heart. Before leaving that day, he told me he would be back in 24 hours, and he zipped his suitcase. He also told me he wouldn't want to see a foot or an inch of me in the house when he returned. My husband even told me to sign the papers and told me not to waste time or hope it was fake because it wasn't. My husband went ahead to tell me that the lawyer's details were in there and said he had signed his already. My marriage was over right in front of me, and I couldn't do anything. Desmond was a little bit difficult, and nothing I did could change his mind. I went to the extent of going after him and tried stopping him, but he slammed the door behind him almost at my face. He didn't care to turn back or listen to all that I had been saying. I was terribly hurt. I didn't know what hurt me the most, if it was the way Desmond left, or the fact that my marriage was over. I couldn't place what it was for me. I was hurt, angry, mad, and was at the verge of losing my mind. I needed a shoulder to cry on at that moment. My husband left without letting me know whether he was going to come back or not. Instead, he asked me to leave his house before he got back. I obviously had nowhere to go or who to run to for help. My so-called friends that were pushing me to say things wouldn't accommodate me. I never thought about that before spilling my mouth. What even happened a night before my wedding was something I wasn't proud of. It's a secret I had kept away from my husband for 3 years. It's unfortunate he had to hear it the way he did. My conscience is taking a toll on me because my husband didn't deserve the way I made him feel that night. I had no idea that he heard everything I was saying. My stupid classmates couldn't signify that my husband was approaching me from behind. They watched me talk and laugh at me. This has taught me not to trust anyone. It showed that none of them meant well for me, and I was too blind to have seen or realized it. Hanging out with them should have been a thing of fun and excitement, but it ended up ruining my marriage. The most embarrassing thing was that I passed out that night. It was one of my close friends that was at the party that brought me home. Obviously, my husband was upset about what he heard, and he left without taking me home like he planned at that time. Who wouldn't be angry after hearing such from the partner you trusted so much? Of course they would. If I was the one, I would definitely be angry. So, I got out of the house before Desmond could come back home. I didn't want him to do the crazy thing he had promised to do when he got back and saw me at home. I knew what he was capable of doing. Update. Reddit, my marriage is officially over. Desmond and I have gone our separate ways, and it's really heartbreaking. I ended up signing the divorce papers with a heavy heart. I couldn't continue deceiving myself that Desmond would come around. I waited for 3 months, and he didn't. I had no choice but to sign them and have it sent back to him. It was one of the toughest decisions I have ever made in my life, one that I didn't know the way out or proper solutions to it. Maybe we were never meant to be together anyway. I really love my husband, and I'm not proud of the way I had hurt him. He was my everything, and I want to tell him how sorry I am for putting him down and shattering his love like it meant nothing to me. His love meant everything to me, but I was too careless to have made fun of it. My divorce was something I didn't pray for or wish for. I never knew this day would come. If I had, I would have prayed against it. Just when I thought my whole life was perfect, a stupid truth and dare spoilt it all for me. This game has taught me a big lesson, and I don't think I would ever want to try it out again. The thought of it scares me a lot now, though I enjoyed it back in the days, but not anymore. It's a game I would forever remember as a thing that ruined my life. Not just my life, but my marriage and the friendship my husband and I both shared. I lost my soulmate to a stupid truth and dare game? Oh no, this is too heartbreaking for me. Is this even a joke, or someone is pulling a prank on me? Will any man accept me after hearing how my marriage ended? How sure am I if the guy would stay? I never thought of going back to the single life after Desmond. I thought he was my last bus stop after numerous heartbreaks. Anytime I remembered the way David asked me those questions that night, I felt a little bit suspicious. It just didn't make sense. Those questions were totally out of the line of what he was asking others. Why was it that exact time when Desmond came to check on me? The way things just didn't add up. The rumors, the setup, the twisted truth. Oh my goodness, it was all planned. My ex, David, maybe even more. They plotted this. I played, manipulated, cornered, and I stupidly fell for it. My marriage didn't collapse by accident. It was destroyed on purpose, and I was made the instrument such crafty wickedness. I never would have imagined the ones I called classmates would do this to me. So our coming together for a fun hangout was mainly to destroy my marriage? I can't cry enough.